an attorney. Certainly, I'm a big fan of his work. But as an attorney, he also said, here's the thing. They're going to have to, one, make the definite connection between LeSean McCoy and the attacker. So, first of all, they have to find the attacker. Second of all, they have to find the jury. And that attacker is going to have to clearly say, which, they call it flipping, but have to say, yeah, LeSean McCoy paid me X amount of money to go get the jury. She wouldn't cooperate. I tried to make her cooperate. I beat her up. Okay, case there. But that connection has to be made. So the question now is, this puts the Buffalo Bills in a pickle. I mean, do they bring him to training camp? Do they go on as business as usual till there's been an arrest or a charge? What does Roger Goodell do? What if he's charged? Does he get suspended? Does he get kicked out of the NFL? Is his days numbered with the NFL? A lot of things revolving around the business of the NFL and the Buffalo Bills. At best, it's going to be a huge distraction this year for him.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, there's that business side of it, which is what do the Bills do? I mean, Shady McCoy just turned 30 years old on July 12th. He's taken a lot of hits in this league. He's still very productive, obviously. But if you're Sean McDermott, the head coach of Buffalo, you're entering your second season. You took this team to the playoffs last year. What do you do? I don't know who. I'm not familiar with the Buffalo Bills depth chart at that position. Could they afford to let a talent like McCoy go because of his production on the field? And you have a quarterback in Buffalo who's a rookie, right? They drafted Allen from Wyoming, and then you have Nathan Peterman, and I think you have a veteran there too that's starting. But you need a running game to make that offense go. But I think here in Philadelphia we saw the Eagles win a Super Bowl because they had a very cohesive locker room. Now they did have talent, yes, there's no question about that. But they also had a locker room that everybody bought in. Everybody was on the same page. Everybody played for one another. There were no divisions inside that locker room. So is McCoy worth keeping inside that locker room, knowing that he does present a major distraction? Because, once that camp opens, there are going to be reporters both locally and nationally. They're going to swarm on that locker room, and they're going to want to talk to McCoy. And, does that present a camp-long distraction? I mean, these are issues that Sean McDermott has to wrestle with. And, I know Sean a little bit. He's a Philadelphia product. He grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia. He wrestled for a local high school before going on to William and Mary. I mean, he's a guy that puts character ahead of many things. So I think he's kind of letting this play out. It wouldn't surprise me if he decides to cut bait with him. Either way, I think this would be McCoy's last year in Buffalo just because of his contract and his age. So do you cut bait with him a year before you were going to, or do you ride out the season, deal with the distractions, and hope this breaks positively for McCoy?
Well, absolutely. I'm a firm believer. Let justice do its job and let the investigation take it where it's to take it. Let's not be judge, jury, and executioner before there's ever been any charges. Doesn't look good for LeSean McCoy at the moment. But as you said, this story's changed multiple times, and when you deal with situations like this, you just got to let it play out. So my guess is that the Bills have to just go on as business as usual. And it might be, if this continues to be a distraction, you mentioned he was 30 years old, they might just look at releasing him and go on from there. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you're right. And he's a big salary cap hit, and, that would give them relief. But, look, here we are, 2 weeks before camp starts, and, a guy that you were counting on, a guy that you were designing plays for in the off season, all of a sudden is under this microscope again. Are you willing to part ways with him, or just let jurisprudence run its course? Like you said, I think that's probably the prudent thing to do, is to let this story kind of unfold and maybe deal with the distractions, because it is early in camp. And maybe if you can kind of bite the bullet, and get through the first week or two at camp, maybe this story will, eventually be solved. or the distraction will go away because something else will happen, which we see so many times. The story of the day is a big thing we talk about for a day or two, and then it goes away because something else happens. So, do you kind of take that approach and just kind of ride out the storm if you're Sean McDermott? Because, again, like I said, they're counting on this guy. They've been counting on him all through the off season, and here we are 2 weeks before, this gets dropped in your lap. I don't envy Sean McDermott. It's a tough decision to make, but I'm sure he's talked to some people and he's getting some good counsel, and I think he's probably just going to wait and see where this leads, and and then go forward with McCoy if he decides to do that.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
So some other news breaking overnight in the NFL, and just certainly we're all very familiar with, especially here in the AFC, with DeMarco Murray. DeMarco Murray announces his retirement. Great career. What are your thoughts on DeMarco Murray deciding to call it quits?
Yeah, surprising. I think he's also 30 years old. He was a free agent. I don't think anybody was beating down the door to sign him. But listen, how committed is he to retirement? That I was going to bring that up with McCoy. Is he that committed to retirement? What if McCoy does get released, or this story doesn't go his way? This allegations are found to be true against him. Do the Buffalo Bills call DeMarco Murray and ask him to come back and kind of gauge his commitment level to the sport? I was kind of surprised. I thought that at 30 years old, he still had a lot to give. He was here in Philadelphia for a year. Didn't really do very well, but that was under Chip Kelly, a different regime. But I was surprised. I mean, to me, he looked like he still had some things left, but nobody was kind of beating down their door to sign him. That doesn't mean once training camp hits and here we get into August, some injuries don't pop up, people might call DeMarco Murray. So I'm not so sure how committed he is to this. It wouldn't surprise me if he does end up coming back, if some team were to call because they needed a running back.
And whenever they go into retirement, it's like kids leaving home. They always come back. But anyway, DeMarco Murray, I think the Colts are glad that. No, I'm just kidding. He's had a great career and certainly a very accomplished career, and I would assume that he would be in the Hall of Fame. Speaking of Hall of Fame, a guy you know very well also with the Eagles, Terrell Owens, making it a little bit of a stink, if you will, going against protocol, if you will. He is going to, for free, invite a bunch of people to a gymnasium. I cannot remember the location. They're basically going to say Terrell Owens are in, but they're not really going to do a live feed that they want to do. Do you think at some point, I get that he's mad at the NFL. I get this, that, and that. I kind of understand why he's doing it. But don't you think that some things should remain in place the way that it was meant to be? And I think getting into the Hall of Fame is such a huge honor that so many people work so hard for. I think Terrell Owens' actions, although you can look at the argument either which way, I don't necessarily agree that he should do it. But at some point, you got to just stop fighting with people. But I just think that it's a sacred institution, and it should be treated as such. If you don't want to show up, I guess that's your right. But I just think Terrell Owens is really making a bunch of ado about this. He's getting into the Hall of Fame. He's getting something that a lot of players never get. Don't you think just a little bit disrespectful to the institution that Terrell Owens, what he's doing?
Absolutely. I 100%. And listen, I know that the Hall of Fame doesn't even want to recognize him, right? They're just going to proceed like he didn't even get in, which I agree with that too. I mean, listen, if you don't want to show up, then okay, we're not going to recognize you. It's as simple as that. This is the highest level you can achieve as a football player, is to get into the Hall of Fame. And I don't, for the life of me, but I don't understand T.O. even a little bit. I really don't. I think he's had some bipolar issues through his career. I think he takes medicine for that. But I just don't understand why you can't let bygones be bygones and go show up and be lauded for a weekend. I mean, this is what he likes. He likes to be, patted on the back and told how great he was. And this is the weekend to do that. Everybody's going to do that and kind of kiss up to you. And yeah, it's a great honor to get into the Hall of Fame. And he kind of, I don't know why he decided to take this stance. I don't understand it, but like I said, I don't understand a lot of things he does. And who's going to show up to Tennessee Chattanooga where where he's going to have his little ceremony? Who's going to show up to that? I don't think anybody but the local media are going to care. I would guess. I mean, I think it's the same weekend, even, is it not? As the Hall of Fame weekend.
And I think what he was trying to do was get some sort of a live video feed so that he could do his acceptance speech live from Chattanooga, video screen, and the Hall of Fame put the kibosh on that. That's not happening. If you want to make a speech, come to Kenton. That's where the Hall of Fame is.
Right.
Hall of Fame is not in Chattanooga, whatever.
I agree.
So,
I agree with that stance. I agree with that 100%, Tom. I think the Hall of Fame directors, I think they're right on point with that. If you don't want to be a part of it, then you go do what you want to do. But we're going to carry on, and unless you want to be here, then don't bother.
Absolutely. We've been talking with Ed Kratz, beat writer for the Philadelphia Eagles, our official NFL contributor, talking LaShawn McCoy and the scandal, what's going on with that, and just certainly some overall NFL talk. Before we let you go, and we're getting ready to go into camp, the Eagles ready to go into camp. Talk with us a little bit about the Philadelphia Eagles as they get ready for camp 2018.
Well, the Eagles so far, with 2 weeks to go, they'll report on July 25th. Both rookies and veterans report that day. Doug gave them as much time. Doug Peterson, the head coach, gave them as much time as he away from the game because they did play into February. So he's opening up camp late. He's opted to bring both groups, rookies and veterans, in together rather than bring the rookies in a couple days early. And then they're going to have their first practice July 26th. But right now, 2 weeks to go, they've stayed clear of trouble. They haven't had any off-the-field issues. The big question, of course, with the Eagles is will they be able to put that championship, that Super Bowl they won behind them and get ready for this year. We always see that Super Bowl hangover, very difficult to repeat. But I think with Carson Wentz not having experienced the playoffs, getting hurt, I think he comes back with the chip on his shoulder. Jason Peters, of course, the probable Hall of Fame tackle, he was hurt last year. He didn't get to participate in that run to the Super Bowl. I think they have enough guys that were hurt last year that will try to keep them motivated to go out and repeat. It's going to be difficult, but the big thing is they've stayed trouble-free, like we see now with McCoy kind of hurting the Bills here, putting them in an unfavorable light right now heading into camp. The Eagles haven't had any of that. They've had no off-the-field issues. So, they're good to go. I mean, I know Michael Bennett, the kid they brought in, not a kid, but the veteran they brought in from the Seahawks, he's got some court stuff still looming with an incident that he had at the Super Bowl a couple years ago in Houston. But really, that's kind of, he's really hasn't been an Eagle. He hasn't been immersed in the culture. We'll see how that plays out. I think August 7th is his next court date. So there is that looming, but I don't think that's a big issue with this team. I just think it's going to be to see how they, are able to put that Super Bowl fever behind them and move forward and get ready to repeat. It's interesting, but getting back to something, Tom, real quick here is it's interesting that Des Bryant has not signed. We talked about DeMarco Murray retiring. When Des Bryant got released by the Cowboys, everybody thought there'd be 8 teams interested in signing him, and yet here we are on the eve of training camp opening. Des Bryant is still a free agent. You wonder if he won't follow Murray into retirement because no team's beating down the door for him either. I think he'll wait and see how camp unfolds, in a lot of places, in a lot of cities, and see if there's any injuries and see if his phone doesn't ring. But that, to me, is a big surprise heading into camp that Des Bryant is still unsigned.
Absolutely, and we were going to talk about that. I knew we had a lot of other stuff to get to, but yeah, Des Bryant does appear like he's going to be retiring. You know who's not retiring? Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck's going to be at camp. I just wanted to put that little plug out there. He's
Absolutely,
throwing real
man.
footballs, Ed. Real football.
Listen, I'm rooting for the Colts, man. I'm rooting for Andrew Luck. He deserves it. I'm rooting for Frank Reich. I mean, listen, that's a tough division, Tom. I think we talked about this in the past. I think that AFC South is going to be a real that's going to be a tough division. Somebody's going to win it, and somebody's going to finish in last. And, right now I think the Colts are probably predicted to finish in last. But, listen, I don't count them out. If Luck is healthy, and Frank